episode to go, and things are picking up speed fast. I love how fast this show moves. I don't understand why people don't like Alien Earth. I'd love to hear some polite counterpoints down below if any of you are not enjoying this show yet somehow watching this breakdowns and would care to explain. Maybe you have a love-hate relationship with it. I'm surprised people don't like it, because to me, it's just everything. It's like, as we discussed on Sunday on Movie Math, the ratings for this show, at least out of the gate, and I don't think it's going to get much better, are real bad. Like, my goodness, maybe overseas audiences will save it, because Nielsen ratings are only for the United States. Maybe people overseas love Alien Earth. Oh, I hope you do. Maybe binging will save it. Maybe people are waiting and they'll go back and give it a whirl. Maybe people who stopped might pick it up. You know, like, how have you liked watching it week to week? Have some of you created like mini binges, like you bank a couple episodes and then you watch them together as like a little movie? How have you discovered has been the best way to watch this show? Now, I had thought that since so much happens in each episode, it would do very well week to week. But maybe, in hindsight, right, which is always, the best way to see things, maybe they should have done what Amazon does, right? And that's, make the first season a binge to get everybody to fall in love with it. I mean, we critics got to binge it and we loved it. So, I mean, maybe the problems that people have had wouldn't have seemed so big if they were able to binge. And then once you've hooked everybody on how amazing this show is, then you switch to a weekly with season 2. They did that with The Boys very successfully, and they're going to be trying that with Fallout. I had thought, because again, so much happens, it would have been a waste to binge this show. But now, I think they should have let it binge. So we're going to work our way through the penultimate episode of Alien Earth Season 1, which sets up some pretty big questions and scenarios for that season finale. Like, what is Kersh's motivation? I just can't get a good read on this guy. You know, some of you picked up on that the Eye was trying to distract Chibouzo rather than warn her. So I'm curious if any of you have figured out what Kirsh might be up to. I actually have a theory that I came to while, in fact, making the notes for this video. But I also want to know what you think. And also, while you're writing stuff down there, why not click on the subscribe button as well? And the like button maybe too? So, I didn't catch it the first time I watched this episode. But when I watched it again to do my notes for this breakdown, I caught that Kersh's iPad controls the doors in the lab. What? That means this whole time he could have saved Isaac and he could have saved Arthur. But he didn't. Instead, he just watched. Isn't that amazing? But he's taking a lot of action when it comes to Morrow. First, he's working with Morrow, like when he gives Slightly and Smeed directions to the beach. I loved it when Slightly was like, Morrow's been talking to me. And Kirsh is like, I know. I loved it. But then he turns around and takes Morrow's baby Xenomorph. It was like a total 180. Kersh had part of me thought that maybe Kersh just wanted to find a way to get to generate another Zeno. But I think there are other ways that he could have done it. I'm not quite sure what's going on here. Kersh has some great lines, though, in this exchange. From finders keepers and don't be a sore loser to my favorite. And that's when Morrow says, this isn't over. And Kersh looks at him and says, nothing ever is. Which I think is particularly true for a synthetic who's immortal. You know, I'm starting to think that Kersh is deeply unhappy. And maybe the hybrids and Morrow are inspiring him to do something about it. He does seem to be changing, right? Now, again, as I watched this episode, I wondered what are Kersh's motivations? Just like for a human character, what is compelling him? And I remembered then that Kersh is 100% synthetic. He's a machine. I guess there's some AI in him, but who built him? Was it Boy Kavalier? And no matter who built Kersh, what was programmed as his original main directive? No matter where he is now, that would be his starting point. So I think that would be very important. Because right now he doesn't seem to have a directive. Unless, and this is what occurred to me while doing my notes, and I think this might actually be it. Maybe Kirsh's original directive is to experiment. That's where he seems happiest. That's what he's always doing. That would explain his behavior. Like, we see him doing obvious experiments, but what if everything is an experiment to Kirsh? Maybe, he says watch as the scientist would watch. Like, he creates trial and error and introduces different things into the experiment and sees what happens. That makes it start to come together. I think that could potentially be it. He's a robot. He's a synthetic program to experiment. I think the people who programmed and created him, it didn't occur to them that, Kersh would see everything, including them, as a big experiment. Speaking of Kersh, it became very clear to me this episode that while the hybrids have always had a human mother, Sylvia, who Curly actually calls mom this episode, I thought of Kersh and Sylvia as an angel and a devil on the shoulders, but in fact, they are truly kind of like the mom and the dad. But Sylvia is actually married to Arthur. And so that really means that the hybrids have one mom, but two dads. A synthetic dad, Kersh, but also a human dad in Arthur. This is fascinating to me. So Kersh is cold, and I think they're actually more parents than Sylvia is to the hybrids. So Kersh is cold and demanding, but understands that they're now more than human. And I thought it was very touching when Kersh kind of clashes with Boy Kavalier over Isaac's name, because Boy Kavalier wants to keep calling him Toodles, but Kersh is making it clear that his name when he died was Isaac. They do establish that they're not uploaded to a cloud because their files are, I guess, just too big. Kersh says, hypothetically, it would be nice, but we haven't figured that out yet. So yeah, no more Isaac. So Kersh, though, pushes the hybrids to be more, while Arthur lets them know it's okay to still be human. I like that a lot. I really like that. Now, talk about pulling on the heartstrings. For the second time, Arthur looks at Slightly in desperation for help. And for the second time, Slightly just watches. Oh, he's just watching too. Sure, and seeing what happens. Sure enough, the facehugger comes off, and Arthur walks around for a little bit, as is standard. We know the deal from previous Alien movies. Arthur's traumatized by the facehugger. In fact, he doesn't even remember at first what happened. And I gotta tell you, Slightly's becoming a pretty good liar. And he says, your wife's waiting for you down on the beach. We got to get you out of here. You were exposed to some gas. That's why you don't remember everything. We carried you out of there. And Arthur actually thanks them for saving his life, when in fact, at that very moment, he's a dead man walking. Then when they get to the beach, Arthur starts to remember bits and pieces of what happened. So he knows that they're lying to him. And he knows that they're in trouble. He knows that obviously there's something making them behave this way. But so he tells them it's okay, and that they can be honest with him, and that he will help them. And he reaches for their hands like a father would for his children. That was beautiful. But you know what the problem with this is? Arthur thinks they made a kid-level mistake. Oh, did you spill something on the white rug? Right? Is it red wine? You think the stain's not going to come out? Did you scratch the car? Don't worry about it. But when in fact, they have made a very adult mistake, because these hybrids are indeed growing up fast. And then, just as he tells them everything is going to be okay, the Xenomorph bursts out and scurried into the bushes. It scurried! We've seen a lot of Xenomorphs at this point, and the baby ones too. But we ain't never seen one like in vegetation. It was so jarring. Like, we're used to seeing them in the cold, sterile world of a spaceship. But here, it was in the sand and the grass. I was like, this is crazy. It was like in a warm and humid environment. I thought it was very jarring. What did you think of seeing it that way? I mean, we see the Zeno, in the same environment. And I think that also looks a little weird. But the Zeno itself is looking weird. Oh, that Zeno's not looking so good. Some of you think that it's molting as it grows. And that might be true. And then some of you think that maybe it looks weird because it grew in a lung, which maybe was not the way Xenomorphs usually grow, like it worked, but there's something weird about the Xenomorph. Like, what a crazy place this Neverland facility is, because they're even alien parasites are being experimented on in cruel ways. Like, if you can make us feel sympathetic for a Xenomorph, you're pretty bad, boy Kavalier. Now, while the Xenomorph wants to escape with Wendy and Joe, the eye ain't afraid of boy Kavalier. It's making friends with him, right? That's so funny. The Xenomorph is making this episode, actually, now that this just occurred to me, this episode is a lot about people making friends and different alliances, right? And even the alien parasites are doing that. The Xenomorph is going off with Joe and Wendy, while the eye has decided to hitch his wagon to boy Kavalier. Now, remember, boy Kavalier said that what he was really looking for was a truly challenging conversation with an entity as intelligent as he is. He's got an ego on him, and he thought that could be Wendy. But now he wants to talk to the eye, as we all do. So he moves it into his office, and while the eye can't talk just yet because it's still in a sheep, it does, which I think is fascinating, understand what boy Kavalier is saying. So it can't speak yet, but it has learned our language, just like Wendy's learned. Oh, that's great. I love the parallels, just like Wendy has learned the Xenomorph language. So the eye is able to complete the next 3 numbers in the pi numerical sequence. I got to tell you, I don't appreciate that pop quiz. Like, I'd be like, well, I would like to think I'm fairly intelligent, but I couldn't tell you what the next 3 numbers in pi are. Wouldn't it be funny if the eye was like, I'm more into arts and history. I'm not really a science math person. But also that means I'm not, language ties into science and math. So I guess that's why the eye is doing so well learning other languages. Oh, very funny. But I think the VFX department did a great job in this sequence because it was so crazy weird and spooky when the sheep used its leg to count out, right? Like just the way it stomped. At first I was like, is that bad VFX? But instead I was like, no, I think it's intentionally moving that way because this is the best the eye can do. I think the eye hates being in that sheep. It's like, it feels it's just not at the level of everybody else in the room. He's like, I can't believe you stuck me in a sheep. And then, just to show you how upset the sheep is, just like Kirsh is upset. That's funny too. This show is so good. I can't believe people don't like it. So the sheep uses poop to communicate. I got to tell you, not only is the eye, the eye uses it. Not only is the eye intelligent, but it's smart enough to have a sense of humor. I can't wait for this thing to talk. Boy Kavalier wants to put it in a human ASAP. So at first he's like, let's pick somebody who's not too intelligent because he can tell that the eye is intelligent so we can see a marked difference when the eye takes over. I'm like, well, the eye's like, I might have a little bit of a learning curve. Let's not, raise the expectations too high. But then boy Kavalier gets an idea for who he'd like to put the eye into. And I got to tell you, I think Joe is once again a first-round draft pick. Boy, Joe is not very popular on that island. Slightly wanted to use him. Now Boy Kavalier. Boy Kavalier does dislike Joe, right? And it would be a very cruel thing to do to Wendy. And, maybe Boy Kavalier is as much Sid as he is Peter Pan. Plus, that's actually a great parallel. But then also, it would give Boy Kavalier quite the set, and I think that appeals to him as well. A brother and a sister where one is a hybrid human synthetic and the other is a hybrid human alien. Although, of course, the human wouldn't retain any of its, I'm pretty sure the eye kills these things. They can't work together. Although the synthetic part of Wendy is not cognizant, so I guess it would be an interesting set. But Boy Kavalier doesn't realize just how close Wendy has become with her own alien friend. So there are some very important developments for Wendy this episode. First off, she discovers that they still can die. That was one of the whole selling points of this procedure. And her reaction to that, by the way, is fantastic. She's like, but we're premium. That realization coupled with that they wiped Nibs' mind because it suited them, I think it finally makes Wendy realize that she's just a product to Boy Kavalier. Another toy. Isn't that interesting? And that it's only a matter of time before he breaks her or finds something that interests him more. In fact, he already has. He's already passed her over for the eye. That's his new plaything. And bottom line, she realizes she's not safe there anymore. So she agrees to escape the island with Joe, and she wants to save as many of her hybrid brethren as she can. I think it's interesting she doesn't even care about Kirsh anymore. But she's like, let's get everyone we can. But of course, everyone's dispersed. Slightly and Smee are on the other side of the island. So she finds Nibs and Curly, and Nibs will go, but Curly opts to stay behind because, she still is buying into the whole fairy tale, bedtime story. But promises not to tell on them, and so far I don't believe that she has. Then the second development is as they're escaping, they come across the graves for their old human bodies. I can't believe that Prodigy buried them this way and left them to be discovered. Sylvia is truly an idiot. I'm sure she felt that maybe someday they'd want to visit that or something like that, but I think it breaks the illusion, obviously, that they're still them. And it underscores that they've moved their consciousnesses to new vessels. And I think it makes them feel like they've lost their anchors. Nibs even directly says she doesn't think she's that person anymore. Like they're more inspired by those original children than actually being them. I mean, look what happens when Joe sees the Marcy grave. He runs to it to clear the brush off of it. And he acts like he feels that even though he says he's convinced that this hybrid is this human synthetic hybrid is his sister, emotionally, he clearly thinks his sister's actually in that grave. And it's very sad. And I think it's helping to kind of like break down the last, Wendy is slowly losing her humanity. Although interestingly, she chooses to go back to her human name. She says, I'm Marcy. So that's an interesting choice because that's, again, going backwards while otherwise she's hurtling forwards in terms of her evolution. So yeah, she's going by Marcy again, but I think overall what's the last thing that's tying her to her humanity is her brother, her human brother, Joe. Which may be, again, why when he goes to the other grave bothers her so much. Because it's like, I think that's partially it. Like, he's pulling away from her. Like, he doesn't feel they're actually on the same team. And that she's not actually human, right? And she's developing a new family. Her hybrid siblings, who she wants to bring with her. And then also her new alien sibling, the Xenomorph. It seems like she only releases that Xenomorph at first as cover, as a distraction, so they can escape. But I think it's because she also doesn't want to leave it behind either. She wants to take all her whole family with her, old and new. But Joe is wondering what his sister is becoming and if she's quickly losing her humanity. I thought it was amazing. There's a Xenomorph right in front of him, and he's not looking at the Xenomorph. He's looking at his sister. And then he asks her what she said to the Xenomorph, and she says, hide and follow, I think. Marcy, now is not the time to be sloppy with what you're saying to this thing. You would think Joe would be terrified of that Xenomorph, or is he getting used to them? I mean, he was around that other one on the Maginot a whole bunch, and it never killed him, which was weird, right? And he was the host for this new one. And some of you think that might create a bond between the two of them, as we've never had a Xenomorph be able to interact with its host before. So what would that relationship potentially be like? Is that why this Xenomorph never attacks Joe? Or is it out of respect for Marcy, who maybe said, by the way, that guy's off limits, he's my brother? Like, why doesn't the Xenomorph attack Joe? Maybe it's a combination of him being Marcy's brother and the Xenomorph's host. But as the Xenomorph, we know the Eye is very intelligent, but I'm still not sold on whether or not the Xenomorph is intelligent enough to make those kinds of distinctions. It still seems more pet-like to me. It's like it doesn't have anything to say back, really. Maybe it's very little still, Maybe it might be big physically, but, it was recently just born. So we've never seen a Xenomorph before have self-control. I guess that is kind of starting to make it a little bit more intelligent. We just thought it was a reckless killing machine that did whatever the queen... Well, some of you feel that Marcy's going to become a queen. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't think it really works. I don't like that for her. But let's see. I guess, if the Xenomorphs need someone to tell them what to do, I guess she would qualify. But I would like it to be... I like the sibling idea a little bit better. Isn't that funny? I guess she kind of becomes Peter Pan to she creates another lost boy in a way. It wasn't her idea, I guess. a lot of overlapping and parallels. But it will be very interesting to see what happens with the Xenomorph that's been raised in captivity. It's already acting different. And also, then finally, Joe and Marcy have a pretty big fight. So we've got a brother and sister here who are in two very different cliques at this school, so to speak. Joe's still hanging out with the humans, but Marcy is hanging out with the synthetics and the aliens. And their friend groups do not get along. That's a very difficult situation to navigate, sci-fi scenario or not. So Wendy gets very upset, and it's scary to see her so upset because she's a child. She's still a child in terms of her emotional, control, and also how she can evaluate a situation, because she's evaluating the situation incorrectly. Joe is in the right here. I think Joe handled it the only way that he could, and I think he showed tremendous self-control. Well, that's also, I like that. Joe said earlier in the season, Wendy's like, I can take care of stuff. And he's like, you're still a kid. I'm the professional soldier. And we do know that Joe is very good in the field. And I think that is shown to be the case here, that she makes a lot of mistakes here. But she's capable of manipulating computers, and she has a xenomorph that she controls. You don't want to make Wendy angry. Now, the soldiers found them at the boat, and I don't think Curly told on them because Joe's soldier friends in an earlier episode guessed that he was thinking of escaping by boat. So they know that they're looking for them, so that's why they went there. Now, the soldiers, they didn't kill anybody, even though Wendy and her xenomorph, those were the Weyland-Yutani soldiers I think they killed back there. But the soldiers, let's not give the Prodigy soldiers too much credit, because the only reason they don't kill anybody is because that's their directive, right? To bring back everyone alive. But Nibs, she's done listening to adults. And she rips off the jaw of the main, the soldier in charge before snapping his neck. Hoo boy. And then she turns on Joe's friends. So of course Joe was going to take her down. And he didn't kill her. Again, he's learning. He saw that Morrow used the electric shock, and that's what he uses. He could have pulled any trigger, but he had the wherewithal to make sure that he used non-lethal force against Nibs. But he doesn't get any credit for it, poor Joe. I think one of the things he did that probably really upset Marcy is that he kept her from calling out the Xenomorph. But again, those were his friends, those soldiers, and that Xenomorph, that was going to rip people to shreds as well. If Marcy had brought in the Xenomorph, they would have been able to escape. But at the same time, she jeopardized their escape by making them go look for her friends. So yeah, you have a brother and sister with two very different friend groups that conflict, but that they're trying to protect their friends, but while also maintaining their relationship. And I don't know if that's possible. I think definitely what you're seeing here is Joe and Marcy growing apart, and therefore their relationship straining. But there's so much relying on that relationship. That relationship, again, is the only thing tethering Marcy to her humanity. So they can't fight like this. I don't know if humanity can afford it. Finally, wasn't that such a cool shot when Morrow came out of the water with the other Weyland-Yutani soldiers? And then the other soldiers popped out as well. It reminded me a lot, by the way, of the stormtroopers in Rogue One, those shots. And I love them both. Very cool. But come on, Morrow, did you have to pick a meeting point that was so frickin' far away? They had to put Arthur on a makeshift raft. When did they have time to even make that raft? No wonder it took so long to get there. How did he think they were going to get there in time? I feel that's on Morrow. It's crazy to have these two tech companies have their own armies and they're going head to head like this. It's like if Facebook and Meta and X decided to have a war. You're like, what's happening here? It's insane. So those are my thoughts on episode 7 of Alien Earth, the second to last episode of the season. Are you excited for next week's season finale? And what are you hoping to see happen? Again, just one episode left. Share those thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.